Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to the Danos Group webinar, Neurodiversity at Work, Unlocking Talent, Innovation and Business Success. My name is Serene, Director and Asia Head of Compliance and Governance in Singapore. And I'm also an active member of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee here at Danos Associates. Very delighted to have all of you here with us today. We've got an inspiring session ahead with three fantastic speakers. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping points. Please do remain on mute throughout the session just to minimize background noise. We'd love to see your faces as well, so if you're comfortable, please do turn your cameras on. Lastly, we do actually have time for Q&A at the end, so please pop any questions into the Zoom chat as they come into mind. And with that, let me hand it over to our moderator, James Franklin.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name's James Franklin. I'm one of the managing directors at Danos Group, based in London. I just wanted to give you a little intro to the Danos Group. The business has been going for over 20 years. In fact, we're in our 21st year. We are a recruitment business that provides services across compliance, legal and risk. And we specialise across the four, which is banking, asset management, fintech and insurance. We also provide services that include permanent recruitment, interim and temporary recruitment. We really hope you enjoy today, this session. I think there's going to be a lot coming out of it from our three key speakers. And we'll look at some, as Serene has said, some questions at the end. Back to you, Serene.
All right, so thank you, James. Our first speaker here today is Winston Wong. So Winston is a passionate advocate for diversity and disability inclusion, working as a consultant and trainer with Incluse, which is a Singapore-based social enterprise that supports adults with disabilities in achieving gainful employment and independent living. Well, over to you now, Winston.
Thanks, Serene. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Winston. I'm currently doing this from Singapore. And as Serene mentioned earlier, I'm from Include. So this is our company logo and slogan. So we want to create an inclusive society by empowering persons with disabilities, or PWDs for short, to achieve employment as well as independent living. So this is just a brief background of myself. I'm currently working at Include as a diversity and inclusion partner. So my core roles are basically to provide employment and internship placement support for PWD and special educational needs students, or SEN students for short. I also establish partnership with corporates who are keen to journey on inclusive hiring. And once they are ready, I will also conduct corporate training for them on diversity and disability inclusion. Outside of all this, I also provide job support, life skills coaching for the PWDs under our care. So this is some of the things that I've done before my current employment at Include. So I wanted to highlight that for the past 7 or 8 years, I've been working in the Institute of Higher Education in Singapore under Nanyang Technological University and Temasek Polytechnic. So for a total of 7 years. And throughout these whole 7 years, I've supported more than 300 PWD and SEN students in their education journey. Let's say, for example, some of them do not know how to tell their lecturers what kind of accommodations that they need. So this is where I come in to be the bridge between them so that they can have a more holistic journey through their education. So I've done trained more than 5,000 participants on disability inclusion and also organized events on disability advocacy and inclusion as well. So some fun fact about myself. I'm also a person with disability. I have bilateral severe profile hearing loss in both ears. So it may not look like it, but I'm currently wearing hearing aid under my earphone. So to share how severe is this level of hearing loss. So let's say I take out my hearing aid. It almost complete silence for me. If someone were to shout right next to my ear, I will be just hearing it like a whisper. So that's how severe my hearing loss is. Yeah. Before I move on to what we do at Include, so for me, my childhood journey was quite traumatic because I was bullied a lot in primary and secondary school just for wearing something extra on my ear. Because 25 years ago in Singapore, inclusion was almost unheard of. Disability inclusion was almost unheard of. So there was a lot of bullying. Disability was a taboo, and it was a really hard journey for me from childhood all the way to employment seeking, which I will share more later. Okay, so what do we do at Include? Right. So very quickly, these are the three main pillars that we currently do at Include. As I mentioned earlier also, we do employment and internship support for PWDs. We do training for the PWDs as well as the corporate. And lastly, we do outside of the school, outside of work, enrichment classes that enhances their social skills as well as their life skills. And these are the talent pool that we support, as well as the condition that we support for neurodiversity, physical and sensory disabilities. We also support cancer and stroke survivors as well. And these are some of the industries, and not limited to this, that we support, that we work with as well. Okay. So moving on to inclusive hiring. Right. So just wanted to share how employers benefit from hiring persons with disabilities. So these are just some of the 6 common reasons, common benefits. So number 1 is a diverse workplace with the needed skill sets and talents. Because there are a lot of PWDs out there who are educated. They went through different life stages, different journeys. They went through different education as well. So all of them have different skill set to contribute to different areas. Right? Number 2, to improve the work culture and facilities with more empathy, workplace adjustment. When you hire a PWD, most of the time accommodations are needed, workplace adjustments are needed. And all these are required because the PWD need it in order to function as well as a person without disability. So when these workplace adjustments are required, usually the empathy, teaching people about why these accommodations are there, why these workplace adjustments are needed. When the colleagues are aware of all these, we hope that they will be able to learn some empathy as well. Right? And improve productivity, lower turnover rate. Right? This is because usually most PWDs are quite grateful when they have a job, because a lot of them are unable to find a job for a very long time. So when they have a job, they are very grateful for it. And that's why they will stay for quite some time at a company. So when you stay for quite some time at a company, the turnover rate is lower, productivity is higher because you don't need to spend more to rehire someone, to retrain someone. Number 4, understanding, serving a wider customer base. When a company is more inclusive, they will be able to understand better on how to support persons with disability or how to serve persons with disabilities, right? So when they know how to serve persons with disabilities, sometimes their product will become accessible and inclusive as well. So this is point number 4. And number 5 is a broader talent pool, as similar to number 1. Right? There are PWDs out there who are really talented, but there are also PWDs out there who are not talented. Yeah, that's a person like myself. I don't think I'm talented in any way, but there are persons with disabilities out there who are really talented in certain areas. So this is the pool that they can tap into. And number 6, enhance company image through CSR, diversity and inclusion efforts. Okay, so how PWDs benefit from being hired? So it really gives meaning and sense of accomplishment to our life. Because, for example, myself, when I found a job, it allows me to be financially independent. I don't have to rely on my parents for pocket money anymore. I'm able to lead a life by myself. I'm able to buy things that I want without having to ask anyone for money or asking anyone for permission. Yeah. Number 3, returns independence to the caregiver. There are also some PWDs who are very dependent on their caregivers. So therefore, when they are more financially independent, it allows the caregiver to return to work. Yeah. Now, sense of belonging to the company, social inclusion, then they are able to learn new skills at the workplace too. Yeah. So these are the some challenges faced by employers in hiring PWDs. Right? Companies are not ready to work together with PWDs. They are unsure how to accommodate. Right? The workplace itself may not be accessible for persons with disabilities. And also number 4, worry about potential stigmas or stereotypes. So for example, let's say a person with disabilities has a meltdown at the workplace and it's a public area. So it may cause some public panic, all right, when people see that there is a meltdown and will result in some potential backlash for the business. Number 5, no PWDs want to apply for my company. And number 6, insufficient budget to hire. Yeah. So just to share quickly about some of the employment challenges that I personally faced. So through my job search process, I had a fear of discrimination and hesitance on whether the company will be inclusive, whether the employers or whether the interviewers will be inclusive towards me. Before the interviews, I was always very stressed whether I'm able to hear them well. Yeah. Lack of work readiness skills, fear of accommodation, and paranoid about how others perceive my working abilities. So these are just some strategies for inclusive hiring and workplace support that I can share with all of you. So how do we do more inclusive hiring? We can use more inclusive language in public materials and job description. So some of these job description nowadays they put, we are open on diverse hiring, whether you are from a disability, LGBTQ. Yeah, all these are inclusive language that will boost confidence and make PWDs like myself, right, more comfortable in applying for a job, and making hiring process inclusive, allowing accommodation during the interview, and training the hiring teams to be more empathetic, inclusive, and more importantly, to minimize unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is, for example, let's say the hiring team has a negative experience working with someone with autism. So, but that doesn't mean every person with autism will be like this. Right? So this minimize unconscious bias and to encourage and promote inclusion through referrals, employee referrals, right, and story sharing about their experiences working in the workplace.
Winston,
And workplace support. Yeah.
Winston, just a heads up, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
These are the workplace support to leverage on accessible infrastructure and technology, right? Building an inclusive culture through mentorship, getting PWDs who are seniors at a company already to mentor the younger PWD hires. And allyship, be an ally for the person with disabilities, advocating together with them, championing for disability inclusion together with them. And educate colleagues on how they can support their peers at the workplace, on some of the tips and strategies, on how they can do better at the workplace, how they can support one another. And lastly, allow a safe space for sharing of the workplace feedback. Like some PWDs may have a negative experience, right, or they may have some areas of improvement. So allowing them a safe space to share, and then sharing this feedback with the relevant supervisors or managers will allow the workplace to be better. Right. So just a quick story sharing the last couple of slides that I have. Yeah. So this is a candidate age 40 with mild intellectual disability that we have supported. So he was residing in a home for disabled, and he graduated from our program training workshop. So we placed him and he worked full-time at a global hotel group for 2 years. So these are the 3 main groups that supported this individual, the hotel team, the home, as well as our life group coach. So they came out with structured routines, checklists, reporting workflow for these individuals to function well, to be able to work well at the workplace. And our job coach will also provide job support for the candidate. We also liaise with the hotel with updates and feedback. Yeah. So this candidate could not, before they came to us, this candidate could not hold a job for more than 6 months. So he was able to work there for 2 years, and he had to leave eventually because of declining health reasons. Okay, so this number 2, age 32 with autism, never been formally employed, only did traineeship. Also, you also went through our program and currently working full-time at a cybersecurity firm, managing the Singapore APAC region. So again, similar to the previous one, the workplace team, our recruiter, our life skill coach work together very closely to provide the necessary workplace accommodation helping the when employer to understand the thinking and the working style of the candidate, so that is able to function at the workplace. Yeah. So that's all I have. Yeah. So basically, this is our headquarters and our R&D tech hub in Singapore. Yeah. Once again, thank you very much for hearing my sharing on this, and I look forward to answering some of the questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winston. It's very insightful. Now I'll just hand it over to James Franklin.
Thanks, Serene. Yes, that was very, very interesting, Winston. I just want to now introduce our second guest contributor, James Fellows. James is the founder and Chief Partnership Officer at Bridge of Hope Careers. He has a very, very interesting background, having started off life in the retail sector, particularly the alcoholic beverage sector, having worked at Mitchells and Butler and Diageo. So I'm sure you've had a pint of Guinness or two over the years. Yep. But also, I think something I read, James, is that you're an old schoolmate of an ex-Prime Minister, David Cameron. So over to you, James.
Brilliant, James. Thanks very much. And Winston, was a wonderful talk. Thank you very much for that. So I don't have any slides here. I thought I'd just tell a story, really, a little bit about my mental health journey, and also how Bridge of Hope came to be, and how we try and help people who are neurodiverse, but also people from all sorts of who have all sorts of barriers to employment to get into work. So you touched on it. I mean, I started, James, with extreme privilege. I was born in Cambridge, just outside London, and age 13, I was sent away to the world's most famous boarding school. And believe it or not, I was in the same class as the aforementioned Mr. Cameron. In fact, I was in the same gambling ring as him. And I was 2 years below a complete buffoon called Boris, who was another prime minister. So I had all the silver spoons in the world when I was brought up. I then went, as you mentioned, I went into the drinks industry. I spent 2.5 to 3 decades on both sides, running pubs, and then on the manufacturing side, the supplier side, with Guinness and Diageo. And life was great, and everything was going great. I'd had this incredibly privileged background. Career was going great, happily married, 3 kids, and I'd completed probably one of my best years of performance in the UK. And probably it was like January or so, at the end of having had this complete blowout year where it seemed like everything was going right. Suddenly, I don't know what it was, but it felt like the wind came out of me, really. And my confidence just overnight went like that. And I had no idea what it was. And from being quite a high-performing exec, I was pretty hopeless for about 3 or 4 months. Unfortunately, I'd got enough credits, corporate credits, that I was able to carry on. And then I got moved. And suddenly the mojo came back again. And I, frankly, didn't think any more of it. Now, this happened a couple of other times as well. And again, each time I was like, okay, this is really weird. I don't understand what's going on, why this is happening. But everything continued to be pretty good in my career. I was over in America. I was happily married. I had this big house, a large swimming pool. What could possibly go wrong? And then, well, frankly, pretty well everything. And my extreme luck turned to extreme bad luck, frankly. I got laid off for the first time of 5 times in 6 years. And then I got swindled by 2 people who cleaned me all of my money out. And I got sued by somebody who took my business away. And it all started to go pretty pear-shaped. And I remember going into the big corner office that I had, and I'd have to shut the door, and I didn't actually manage to turn the computer on for 3 or 4 days. And so, not surprisingly, somebody said, look, you need to go to a doctor. In fact, it was my wife. So I went to the doctor, and I went along, and I explained my situation. And I told them I was feeling a bit stressed, etc. And at the end, the doctor gave me 2 pieces of paper. And the first one, this was America after all, was a long list of drugs that I had to go and get from the local pharmacy. And the second piece of paper said at the top, urgent, do nothing else under any circumstances, but go to the local hospital, and there's a team of specialists that are waiting for you. So I did the obvious thing. I tore both pieces of paper up. I threw them in the trash, and I went home and I told my family there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Denial was complete. But I'm sure you all appreciate denial is actually not a very effective strategy for life. And it didn't take me long before this started to unravel again. And 5 days later, I was in front of another psychiatrist, and they turned and they said the most terrifying words that I'd ever heard in my life, which is that I was to be sectioned for the foreseeable future. And I frankly didn't know what was more scary, the section bit or the foreseeable future, which I assumed was for life. So I was then taken, handcuffed, and taken to a psychiatric ward just outside New York, where I spent a couple of weeks, still in denial, but also feeling incredibly guilty. I was taking a bed where I thought, there was nothing wrong with me. I was just hopeless, and I was taking somebody else's bed. And then my brother and uncle came along and they said, look, they saw me and they realized, they told me that I was extremely ill, which I still didn't believe was the case. And they said, look, we're going to take you home, and we're going to take you back to the UK to recover. Now, everybody thought this was a good idea. I actually didn't get a vote, but if I'd had a vote, I would have thought it was a good idea. So I came back to the UK, and I met and was basically told to go and see two separate doctors and psychiatrists, and they both came back within 2 days, and they said, yep, you've unquestionably got bipolar disorder. And first of all, I'm like, well, what the hell's that? And they explained it used to be called manic depression in the old days. And I'm like, okay, that does sound a bit familiar. I've been told I'm manic by a lot of people. There are a couple of people who are on this call who know that. I'd had these experiences that, I didn't really know what they were, but now it kind of rung true that they must have been depression. So I was like, okay, well, first of all, again, I didn't really want to accept it. Then I slowly accepted it. And now, nearly 9 years later, I see it as my superpower. There's absolutely no question. I could not operate without my bipolar. But I had to kind of get going, basically, and carry on. And then over the next 6 weeks or so, my entire Maslow's pyramid just disintegrated, crumbled to smithereens. My marriage went, my 3 wonderful kids went, still not back. My corporate career went, and everything I owned, apart from a suitcase, went, which was all frankly pretty rubbish, as you can imagine. But I had to try and work. I'd been unable to feed my kids before, and I had to try and put some food on the table. So I went out and I thought, right, I'll try and get a job. And I was told by my doctor, you cannot under any circumstances do a job that uses your brain. You've already messed it up too badly. So I thought, well, I'll go and get a job in a pub. James, you alluded to that. I've run plenty of pubs. I know how to do that. But none of them would give me a job. And I thought, well, maybe a coffee shop. And they're like, absolutely, no way. In fact, everybody just laughed when I tried to get a job. And having been white male and very privileged, I'd never experienced barriers to employment. But there they were, staring me in the face. Talk to the hand. Luckily, there was a frozen meat factory down the road. And I went to them and they said, right, are you prepared to get up at 4 a.m? Are you prepared to work 18-hour days for less than minimum wage? And you prepare to work at minus 55 degrees. And I'm like, yes, 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 count me in. So I was the janitor at the frozen meat factory. My classmate was the prime minister, and the irony was not lost on me. But I clawed my way back into the corporate world, and I thought, okay, I'm back. I smashed all my targets. And 2018, I got laid off for the final time. Hopefully the final time anyway. And I sat on a church wall and I was trying to digest why the hell my life had just completely imploded. And I got a bit of a talking to, and you probably think this is a load of rubbish, but I could take you to the spot. But I got a talking to from somebody above who made it very clear that they were not that impressed about my ability to get people drunk and that I needed to do something more meaningful with my life. So I decided I'd do that, and that meaningful, the one thing that screamed out to me was a job. Now, all of you get this, but the power of a job, what it does for you, your family, your finances, your self-worth, it's absolutely critical. And the devastation of unemployment, what it does. So I thought I'm going to try and help other people, less fortunate myself, get jobs. I had, frankly, no idea how to do that. So I rang up a lot of charities and I asked charities who looked after neurodiverse charities. I looked after veterans, ex-offenders across the board. Turned out they were all brilliant at getting people back on their feet, and they all did pretty well nothing about getting people into work. And some brilliant work there by Winston on how you guys get people into work. But it struck me, what a talent pool. I'm bipolar, so we see opportunity everywhere. And there was a huge need, even 7 or 8 years ago in the UK. Organizations wanted to be more inclusive, wanted to be more diverse, and just didn't know where to find them. So that was the genesis of Bridge of Hope, was connecting the dots between these disadvantaged groups, marginalized groups, call what you like, we call them untapped talent, and inclusive employers. And so we did 2 years as a small charity. We evolved to a social enterprise by necessity through the pandemic. And we'd hope we might have, I don't know, 1,500 or so candidates on our platform. But right now we have 79,000 in the UK and a partnership, which means we have 750,000 around the world. And a large proportion of them are neurodiverse. It's hard not to have some mental health condition if you've been homeless or if you've been in prison, etc. So this is absolutely the glue that holds together our talent pool. But what we don't
James, just a 2-minute warning for you.
Okay, perfect. So what we don't do is we don't try and promote people to hire these people because they need a break or it's the right thing to do. We say, why the hell are you not hiring them? Because they're fantastic talent. And in particular, when you talk about neurodiverse talent, if you're looking for high compliance jobs, why are you not going after autistic talent? Or if you want very creative jobs, what about dyslexic, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what we're trying to do. I'm going to honor the timing and cut short, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of idea of how we came to be and what we do. But thank you all very much.
Thanks, James. It's a very interesting story that you talk around, and I think there's a link on your LinkedIn page that goes into more detail about your journey, and I think there's obviously some significant takeaways there. But thank you for all of that. Serene, just handing back to you to do the last introduction.
Thanks, James. And James. Our final speaker here today is Linda Lim. Linda is our APAC Head of Private Bank Compliance and Compliance Services at Barclays in Singapore, a very well-respected lady within the banking sector. She's also a passionate advocate for inclusion, led several initiatives within Barclays with regards to neurodiverse talent, and continues to promote accessibility and belonging within the workplace. Linda, very honored to have you here with us. Applause for you now.
Thank you, Serene. I'd like to first thank Danos for inviting me to share my story and share Barclays' approach towards inclusion. I'm really inspired hearing Winston and James speak about your journey and how resilient you are to overcome diversity, right? It's really not easy. I myself find this topic close to my heart. I have a very close friend whose daughter is diagnosed with having global processing delay. So it basically affects her thinking. Think of it as a CPU where we are operating at 100%. The child is probably operating at 5%. So there is a lot of difficulty in understanding normal situations. She can't read the room. She can't really detect, danger. And that's been a constant worry of my friend, right, in terms of how she's going to help her child integrate into society. And I'm so happy to hear from Winston that there's definitely a wonderful organization, and also James, right, on helping people with such a disability find hope, right, in the world, and make them feel confident about the potential they can bring to the society as well. So with that, I'd like to share a bit about putting into practice what Winston shared earlier around some of these principles and how Barclays have bring that to light. So first of all, we aim, and we have openly said we are working towards hiring, or in fact hiring people with neurodiversity conditions or any other long-term health conditions, right, or even physical disabilities. This has been openly said, and it's a commitment we made in our annual report. We want to drive change. We want to level the playing field. We want to make sure that everybody is included and given fair opportunities to work in organization in the finance sector, right? So while we are not as exciting or creating the highs in the beverage sector like James, we have many jobs that is kind of heart stopping, but in a way they are useful jobs, right, to help the economy grow, right? First of all, we do have internal resources online, and it's very important because they are needed to guide and ensure there's consistency in how we interact and embrace our colleagues, right, with these conditions. So first of all, we do have courses, and I find them very useful. I took an introductory course. The course teaches us things that we may not be mindful of, right? For example, how do we use appropriate language to address or introduce our colleagues with disabilities? We have to be respectful, and sometimes out of no ill intention, we may use certain terms. We should always ask them if they need our help. we should ask if we're going to touch their aids, right? All these are probably not things that we normally will be mindful of until we are taught them, right? The other thing is we have a very diverse conditions library where you could, download and learn about any sorts of condition that you may have someone on your team with dyslexia, and how do you deal with that. Lastly, we also have this workplace adjustment toolkit, and that is more for physical disabilities, but it's very important because we need to understand what exactly we need to help you with, right? What requirements you need to be able to work well. Do you need a better chair? Do you need the desk to be at a certain height? Do we need to be more flexible in allowing you to work more days at home? Because these don't compromise your abilities to work. In fact, we want to make you more comfortable, right, when you work. And we do have accessibility program in the bank where they have done deep dives, speak to colleagues with disabilities to understand how they could improve working conditions. And this takes people in from CRES facilities, HR, procurement, everybody come together, right, to make this better. And a very simple change we did was update the phone book if the colleague is willing, right, with their disability, so we understand how to engage or interact with them better. It can be as simple as communication preference, right, or and that is very important and useful for other colleagues to be able to make sure that we respect them and help them in the best way to communicate with us. We also have an employee resource group, REACH. They are a support group that brings together, right, interested parties, whether you are a person yourself with disability or family members with disabilities, right, come together, right, come to this group, share your personal experience. It's a safe space. It's very important what Winston mentioned, safe space, right, to share your struggles, share your challenges, learn from each other. And in 2023, right, Barclays organized a Neurodiversity Week. It was so useful. We brought in professionals, panel speakers, advocates to talk about various topics like special education needs, which I shared earlier with about my friend with the child. It's so important. I'm glad to say that in Singapore, our education system is very good. I mean, I've seen how the schools have helped her by assigning, a teacher to interpret the questions in the exams, right, and to basically make adjustments. And there's a wide range of support on tutors with that's trained in special needs education, right? So I think all this is very important. Next, I'd like to share a story, right, as to how I, as a line manager, actually have first-hand experience and how I try to apply the tools to help my colleague. So 3 things I learned, right? We need to understand the impact that causes to others on the team. As a line manager, how I am non-judgmental and flexible. And lastly, always make sure that you seek professional help in supporting the colleague, because you are not the subject matter expert, and what you think is right may not be right for the colleague. So I have inherited this team member with, then I didn't realize, but she had severe depression. So I was really puzzled that somebody so bright and cheery and effective in her work, right, suddenly turned very toxic and started attacking everybody and anybody, including calling out her own line manager, my direct report, right, for being avoidant, ignoring her, basically even to her, in her mind, aggressive or abusive towards her. I was so shocked because this colleague I've worked for 8 years, always been a great line manager, never heard of this before. And my first instance is to think, what had went wrong, right? And I spoke to him. As a line manager, he felt so bad. He actually started doubting his supervisory capabilities and wonder what's happening to his ability to lead. And that affected the wider team as well, right, when you think about that. And it's very sudden, right, that she's escalated into this manner, and we all couldn't understand what has happened. Then that impact it's very felt, because then she started not only being toxic in the own small team, she started impacting the wider team and also the business stakeholders. So I got a lot of calls around, why is this person being so rude to me? why is she not even understanding what I'm trying to say, and then this frequent need to be off work is very disruptive to the team, right? And I have to respect her condition, right? The second point of non-judgmental. So my point is, at some point, to be honest, I was thinking if there is a gaming of the situation, to be honest, right? Because the constant long absences from work, and basically throwing everybody under the bus, right? I doubted. I have some doubts at first, but then I quickly turned to realize that no, look, she couldn't have just done like this in sudden moments, right? There must be some trigger factors, and we need to make sure that she receives the right help. So what I did was, of course, I can't do this alone, which brings it to my third point, right? Seek professional help. So we have an employee assistance plan where we could get help from HR, and they could then further get help from occupational health hazard specialists, doctors, medical officers, right? To not only offer counseling to the colleague, but also bring her through a journey of getting herself checked and her condition assessed, and bring back to the bank how we can help her, right? What's actually her concern and what we can do to change and make her work life better for her. So what we did was then, essentially I had to assign a new line manager, someone she's more familiar with, a female line manager because she prefers them. I had to be very accommodating to make sure that she can take the leave absences as much as she can, right? Giving her the trust that her job will always be secure, right? Don't worry, right? You can take 2 months off. It's not going to affect you. Adjust her workload because doctors advise that she couldn't do more than 5-6 hours a day. It's going to stress her out. I myself offered a lot of skip level sessions with her, hearing her concerns, telling her it's okay, assuring her, right, from her job security perspective, this is not going to impact her. And then in the same time, right, because she raised many grievances against many people in the organization, I had to also deal with telling her that, don't worry, right, we'll give you a fair review. Sorry. So I guess
Sorry,
all in
Linda,
all,
sorry to interrupt, Linda. 2 minutes left.
Yeah, correct. So I think what I'm trying to then bring to the last point is really our firm's commitment, right? This episode has shared that we need to be flexible, we need to be adaptable. Each colleague's condition is very different, right? And we just have to ensure we provide support to them. And as a bank, when we did survey and statistics, right, we have 11% of colleagues saying that they are having some sort of disability, right? And out of which 24% have neurodivergence condition. And this number is growing year on year. So I think from a Barclays perspective, what we are trying to do is that when we run these surveys, right, we are trying to collect data, demographics, concerns, how are these groups being impacted, and how we can use this data-led information to make decisions to improve their lives for the better, right? And I think this is a commitment. As I mentioned in our annual report, we remain very open to hiring people with disabilities. And maybe Winston and James, is something I could take back to my organization to see how we could be partners as well. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for hearing and listening to my sharing. Thanks, Irene.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's really encouraging to hear Barclays' commitment to neurodiverse hiring and value placed on creating opportunities for everyone. As we all know, Asia, it's slightly in Asia-wise, we are really trying to continue to move towards a more inclusive workforce. So all the work that you are doing, Barclays is doing, Inclus is doing, really serves as a very important example of how we can continue to support and empower neurodiverse talent meaningfully. Right. So anyway, thanks a lot to all our speakers for all the insightful presentations. We'll now move on to the panel discussions and Q&A. We've been sent a couple of questions in advance. All right. So the first question is from Danos to James. How many candidates are you helping to place each year, and into what types of candidates?
Into what type of
Industries, apologies.
Okay, no problem. we'd love to give you a straight answer to that. We can't because effectively we're a job board and a CV database. So candidates apply from us and they go to the employer's site, and then we don't know whether they've got a job or not. What we do know is you're talking about between 2 and 5% is the sort of typical rate for a job board. And so we've put over, we're thinking, we did the maths and we think it's about 30 to 40 people per month we're putting into work, many of whom are neurodiverse. Now, I think, there's a number of factors on that as well. So social value is a big deal now, particularly in the UK, and that's the S of ESG. And so when you look at these people and whether they're neurodiverse or refugees, they're all, the kind of value we're talking about is around £20,000 in social value. So that spikes compared with any other lever you can pull when it comes to S of ESG. Inclusive hiring is the one that really spikes. Now, if they've been in prison, and again, many of whom are neurodiverse by implication, you could treble that number as well. So can't give you a definitive answer on that bit. And then intersections, we work with, in sectors, we work across the board. We work with anybody from KPMG to Diageo to enterprise to Kia. So it's pretty well sector agnostic. But thank you for the question.
Thanks a lot, James. We do actually have another question that came in for Linda. It's from Isabel. So, Linda, how do we go about ensuring that neurodiversity policies are not just tick boxes exercises, but really driving real cultural change?
Thanks for the question. I think it's really about building that awareness, right? I do agree with you, Serene, that we are very new in Asia, right, in terms of embracing and trying our best to hire, especially in a very technical organization like Barclays, where we are doing work in the financial sector, often very the people that we hire, they will have to have the technical knowledge, right? And there will be limitations in terms of who we can onboard as well. But having said that, it's really first step, right? The baby step is to create that awareness and to be open-minded. So I think it's in all of us, right, including myself, that we need to make that change. And how I've practically done that is that I have a role that is a compliance advisory role in India. To be honest, we need the person's competence and knowledge and skills, right? Whether he and I took an active decision to say that for this role, let's look at diverse candidates, and we hired someone. He has a physical disability, right? But he's great. He's great at his work, and I spoke with him. I love how he has improved our risk and control culture. So I think for me, it's really taking that first step, and we need to bring that awareness across and encourage more and more of my colleagues to be open-minded. So that's how I think that we can build that culture across. Thanks, Serene.
Thanks, Linda. On that point itself, right? How have you actually found most effective when it comes to supporting neurodivergent team members while at the same time balancing business goals?
You really need to ask them, and understand their health condition. You need to understand, right, what is their limitations, right, and how it may affect them at work. But you need to have that honest conversation to say, look, we are here to make this work for you, for me. But I as a line manager need to explain my expectations on the role, right, and how business needs our help. But please tell me, what are your health conditions, and in how I can make those adjustments so that you could contribute to the expectation that is needed in the organization. I think this is just an open conversation, that there's no two ways around how we get around it. And once we have that understanding, right, then it's about me as a line manager, I'm blocking the obstacles for the colleague, right? Be it physical disability, how we can, make some workplace adjustments for the person, or if it's neurodivergent condition, then again, like I mentioned, we need to be understanding as to how we change the structure. So for that colleague with depression, she refused to talk to anyone. Her role is in surveillance, and she needs to speak to a difficult conversation with front office who have alerts, right? She couldn't do that. I had to repurpose her and readjust her to another part of the job, which limits her interaction with external parties. So I think you really need to have the open conversations, and then, try your best to to adjust and make them feel comfortable.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Linda. All right. Well, we do actually have one more question for Winston. So, Winston, in your experience as part of Incluse, right, what's one practical step that you think organizations, especially in Asia, can take today to move from awareness to action when it comes to neurodiversity hiring?
Thanks for the question. There's always one thing that I encourage corporates and companies when it comes to taking that first step to doing inclusive hiring, which is take that step, but take a small step. Right? So what do I mean by this is, for example, if you all remember learning mathematics, we don't start learning the number 5 and 6, for example. We start with learning the number 0 and 1. Well, we start off from the easy one and then moving up to the more advanced and more difficult. So what I'm trying to say here is, you can start off with hiring interns first, instead of starting from a full-time hire. And why is this so? It's because hiring an intern is less demanding and not as heavy compared to doing a full-time hire. Not as you don't have to what's the word for it? You don't have to contribute that much, compared to hiring a full-time hire. Because an intern is just there with you for 3 months, 6 months, or even 9 months. Right? So the commitment is not so heavy compared to a full-time hire. So that's a practical tip that I always give corporates. If you are not experienced with inclusive hiring, start off with hiring interns first. All right, and don't have to feel embarrassed about getting someone with an easier condition to manage, because what we are trying to do here is making the experience positive for your company, getting your colleagues and supervisors, managers comfortable with working with someone with a disability. All right. So starting with something easier and then getting the experience in before moving on to something more advanced or more challenging. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Thank you so much, Winston. I believe we have one more last questions coming in from Vibor, which I reckon it's for everyone, right? He's actually, as someone keen on contributing to inclusive and innovative driven workplaces, could any one of you share what kind of roles or skill set companies like yours actively look for when hiring neurodiverse talent?
Well, I'll just pick up. I mean, I touched on this in my talk, and I think there's a grave danger by trying to stereotype different stages of the spectrum, etc. But there is some commonality, and we do think, you look at the autistic talent pool, as we call it, it is around, in the UK, it's around 20% of people who have autism have a job, which is just absolutely crazy. But now, not only could they do a phenomenal job in many of these high focus, high intensity type of roles, compliance, logistics, you can go through these different ones where there's a really good fit, but also they can work from home. So if a lot of the challenge around the autism bit and work is actually the environment. Well, if you're not in that environment, then you can work at your own time and do whatever you want. So we think there's a huge opportunity around autism. And then if you look at dyslexic and also bipolar, so dyslexic, incredibly creative, and bipolar, I did quite a lot of research on bipolar, and there was actually a book written about bipolar, and it looked at the founding fathers of America. They came back by 2 psychiatrists, and they said, we're pretty confident at least 90% of them are bipolar. And the premise was you kind of have to be bipolar to leave your nice cozy farm in Norfolk or Suffolk or somewhere in the UK or in Ireland and go to a flat land, barren land with nothing there and think it was a good idea. But I mean, if you asked me, I would think, well, of course you'd do that. It'd be a no-brainer. So, play to the strengths of the different types of neurodiversity, and you're going to get some phenomenal talent. But I defer to Winston as an expert here in the subject.
Yeah, sorry, if I may add on here, I think for us, what we usually do is when we speak to the candidate, whether it's neurodiverse or physical sensory condition, we try our best to understand the condition of the person as well as the accommodation needed by the person. And then when we talk to our company, right, who are hiring, we will let them know this profile that we have. the accommodation needed, the conditions and everything, so that this company is well aware of what is this profile that they are getting, and then they are able to make an informed decision of whether they want to proceed with the individual. Yeah. So of course, we try our best to match the candidate with the relevant skill set. Let's say the engineering with an engineer. Yeah, but that is really the baseline for the technical skills. But there is always a second layer, which is the accommodations and the conditions. Yeah. So this is how we do our best to match the candidate and the company together.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Winston. Linda, is there anything else that you'd like to add on to what has been discussed?
Yeah, I think for us, our job description is straightforward, right? So if you have the necessary skills and competencies, we interview you for who you are. Of course, we encourage you to disclose your condition, right? I guess to us, we just have to be as open as we can, right? So long as your condition doesn't affect your ability to work, there's no reason why we wouldn't see you as equal or opportunity across the other candidates as well. So I think it's just to be fair and equitable, right, in our selection process. Yeah, thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Linda. Well, thank you all for your questions and engagement. This brings us to the end of our Q&A session. To conclude and close today's event, I'll hand it over back to James Franklin.
Thanks, Serene. Well, thank you to everyone for your contributions this morning and this afternoon, depending on the time zone you're in. I found it extremely interesting, just picking up on some of the things that Winston was talking around, some of the stigma that still exists, but also some of the advances that have been made in Asia and particularly in Singapore. But also, Winston, I think some of the strategies you were talking about, I think were very useful. I think from James's perspective and the journey that you've clearly been on, the barriers to entry that you faced, having had the career you had, and then of course the positive impact that you've made through Bridge of Hope is a fantastic story. And Linda, just touching upon Barclays and the work that you've been doing there, and listening to, I guess the bank adapting its working conditions to those that have some neurodiverse conditions, more days at home, which flies in the face of some of your other banks in the market who are trying to bring people more into the office. So it's really good to hear that Barclays are taking a lead on that. Thank you again to everyone. Thank you to all the people that joined today to listen. We hope very much that you'll join us for our next webinar. Have a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.